Yo, what is going on, guys? So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can stop ruining your footage and go from this to this. Just a few simple tips and tricks that you need to know when editing in DaVinci Resolve. Yes, this is all going to be done in DaVinci Resolve because really, if you want to color grade properly, that's where you need to be. So let's get into it. So before we do begin, you have to understand that color grading isn't an exact science. There's no yes or no right answer. It's more of a stylistic choice to help portray your storytelling. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a few things you can do to make your whole color grading workflow easier, and just a few tricks that just make the whole process a better experience. So the first thing you want to do once you have your color tab open is find your hero frame. Now this is just going to be a frame that you're going to base the rest of the clip on when you are color grading. So I know I want to choose this frame here while he's waiting for the quarterback signal. So obviously this footage is in log, so the first thing I want to do is transform that to a Rec 79 color space, which brings me to my first tip, which is to transform your footage at the end. You do it at the beginning, but in DaVinci Resolve, you do it at the end. Let me just show you. So what we're going to do to start this off is to create the node tree template that I usually use for all my S-Log3 footage. We have log footage still on the screen, so the first thing we want to do is color space transform. This is a simple process where you input your color space. So I know that this is shot in S-Log3. I'll choose those options there. The color space, output gamut, usually you can leave it as use timeline, but I like to change it to make sure it's specific to Rec 709A. And then one more step I do that I learned from Quasi, I think his name's Quasi, this channel here, is also adding a color space transform at the beginning, inputting your space again. Where is S-Log3? But then changing this to DaVinci wide gamut. And all this does is just increases the amount of flexibility you have when color grading your image. Now, the reason why this is the first tip that you want to make sure you do at the end is because if you do what I used to do and a lot of people do and transform their color space at the very beginning, when you then go to make adjustments, you're making adjustments on the Rec 709 image, which has a lot less detail than the full log image that your camera recorded. So when you are making these adjustments, you want to make those adjustments before the last node, which is the color space transform, so that you can get the best quality when you are changing all the different colors, changing the exposure. You can do all these things without having your image break. Because if you do that on a ready edited image of the Rec 709 image, that's when you will start to get the little blurges and the weird things that happen when you change the colors. I think that makes sense. Yeah. So the first thing I do is just add that contrast in. So I will just adjust this so I can, really spread this image out. Add a slight S-curve, really putting down those shadows, making it a bit more punchy. You can see the difference there straight away. It just gives more of a fuller look. And yeah, we're good to go to start adjusting our image. So next thing I'll do is go to the balance, coming into my primary log wheels to change the temperature to make it warmer or colder, or even the tint going from magenta to green. Instead of using these controls up here, I use the offset down here. And what this does is allow you to balance out the entire image rather than just specific areas. So straight away I can see just from the skin tones and the general greens and the blues in the sky is that the image is slightly magenta, which is a common problem with kind of Sony cameras. That's always slightly on that pinky purple side. So what I'll do, I'll just go the opposite direction, not too much, kind of find that balance point. There, that small adjustment, that's all I need to do. As you can see, going back and forth, we've just taken out of those magentas, out of the skin tones, out of the sky, and just gone back to a more balanced image. Next, I'll go into exposure, which brings me to tip number 2, which is to input your camera settings when you are adjusting your exposure. So if we come down to the HDR wheels that we have here, on these 3 dots at the bottom, you can enter in the color space of what the camera was shot on. So I know this was shot on S-Gamut 3, S-Log3. So now when you're adjusting these settings, it's going to be more like you are adjusting it in camera. So I want to kind of take this up a level, take the shadows, bring it up just slightly. Cool. So now with those settings changed, we can see already we're at a great point. So if you look from before, when we just had the Rec 709, to now, like the image is a lot fuller. We're no longer at that purple kind of tone. So now we can start to do our custom things to make this image how we want it to look. So tip number 4 isn't completely relevant to every scenario, but if you do have a sky that is slightly blown out in the background of your shot, this can make it look like your dynamic range has been extended. So what we'll do, come down to the sky again in the HDR wheels, and we just want to input the color space that we filmed in, and the gamma. And then what you want to do is usually it's in highlight or light, depending on how blown out it is. I'm going to go for highlights at first, and then if we need to move to light, we'll go there. But you go to your highlight, and what you want to do is just slightly push it to the blue side. slightly there, then bring down the exposure a tiny bit, and then push up your saturation just a bit. There we are. The sky is back. You can now see it within the clouds. If we go before and after, that simple trick there brings back the sky that was once lost and just makes it look like your camera has a lot higher of a dynamic range. Next, I would go into my HSL, which is where I just manipulate colors. If I want to change the skin tones, if I want to change really the color of anything. So now going on to the last node and sharing the final tip is to use your LUTs after you've balanced out your image. So I'm sure you've experienced it when you've bought some LUTs from your favorite creator and you put it on your footage and it just doesn't quite look good. You know, you see it on theirs and it's transforming my footage looking really cool, but on yours, it just looks weird, like it doesn't look right. Well, a lot of the times that's because when they've made those LUTs, they have made it for their set white balance. You know, they have balanced out their image for the correct white balance, for the correct exposure, and then made their LUT based off that. Just how we balance out the image and then we start to create the look. So if you're adding their custom look to your image that isn't balanced out, whether that is your wrong exposure or your wrong temperature or tint, your image just won't look very good. So if you go through the steps to balance out your image first and then go to apply your look, you'll get a much better result. So now going here, if I want to add a LUT, and I'll use one of my own, the Sunday Finisher, because this was created for this, you will see straight away, this looks terrible. You know, the exposure is completely gone, the saturation is a bit too much, and the look just isn't quite hitting the same way. Well, that's because, like with most other LUTs, these LUTs take you from S-Log to Rec 709, which is fine, but again, you're running into that same problem. So what you want to do instead is have all of your exposure, have all of your balancing done out beforehand, then just dial it back. Dial back the LUT. You're still getting the look, just not the intensity. So I'll probably go to here, 0.4. That pretty much does it. That's the kind of look I want to go for. And if I want to still manipulate around that, because I'm going to make this slightly warmer the way it was very hot temperature, and just the image I want to give it is more of a warmer look. All I have to do is in that temperature is just slightly push it a bit more. There, perfect. Now we have the exact look that I want to go for. So if we look at the different stages, so S-Log, this is how it was, very flat, very horrible, no one wants to see that. Then we bring in the Rec 709 to get it back to a normal standard Rec 709 color space. Next we add in the contrast to fill it out a bit. We balance out the image, getting the white balance to where we want it. We'll adjust the exposure, bring up our subject and decreasing the exposure of the sky. We'll then bring the sky back with a custom node, just bringing those blues back. Then we'll change and just kind of slightly mute down the green so they don't pop out as much. Lastly, we'll add it in our look so we do have that full image and we've gone from Rec 709 to that great looking image. Yeah, that is pretty much it. So if you have got a lesson, laugh, or a light bulb moment from this video, I'd really appreciate it if you drop a like down below. And if you're feeling extra nice, you could hit the subscribe button. But that being said, I will catch you in the next one. See ya.